Welcome back to the High Performance Herd. We're fortunate today to have Abdol Moabery with us. He is the founder and CEO of GA Telesis, a aviation company that he founded and started and has grown to tremendous success. And we'll kind of hear about how he and the organization have done that. Welcome, Abdul.
Thank you, David. Looking forward to speaking with you.
Fantastic. So I always start with at some point in your life, you looked and said, man, I want to lead. I want to do something bigger than me. I want to have a team that extends beyond you. And if you think back to where did that originate? How did that start? What drew you into leadership? How would you respond?
It was from a very young age. I was on the playground, and I was the team captain. I always wanted to be the leader wherever I was. Maybe I whether I should have or shouldn't, I tried to take charge of every situation. And I just built on it from there and, on through to the military. Had some great experience gained there. My first job out of college, I moved up the leadership ranks very quickly. In roughly 4 years, went to my next gig and worked my way up pretty quickly there. And that is when I decided that I wrote a business plan, which is now what GA Telesis has become. For them, they didn't like the plan, so I left and did it myself. The ultimate sort of uh, leadership vault.
It's funny. I have some of that same story, and I know a handful of entrepreneurs do the same. Like, hey, I want to do this. You take it to your company, and they go, "Yeah, no thanks." And
Yeah.
you've dreamed it, built it in your mind, and you're like, "Well, then great, I'm going to go do it." And so you went off and started. I'm sure with some trepidation. Talk about the origin and the start of GA Telesis. Like, what and how did you start it?
Yeah, sure. I was um I as I said, I wrote the business plan. I worked for a financial firm, an investment firm, and they said, no, it's not right for us. But it's a good idea. So great. Thanks for the validation. I nicely resigned and said I'm gonna go out and raise the capital to do it myself. From there, but before that, I had to check in with the wife. I was newly married. I had a gosh, 3-month old that was both at home counting on me to bring home the monthly paycheck. But I went to my wife and said, look, you know this is an opportunity that doesn't come along often. This is sort of just after after 9/11, the everything was broken. Everybody had sort of their focus on other things, and a new entrant coming in wasn't going to be anything anybody paid attention to, which was sort of my design. I didn't want to bring attention in the early days to what I was doing. So had a little desk in the master bedroom of my home, um, that was mortgaged, and perhaps that was one of the scarier things I was worried about because I wasn't gonna be able to get a paycheck for a while. Um, but, I put my nose to the grindstone. I worked really hard on finalizing my business plan. I approached, investors that were knowledgeable about my sector, which I think was a differentiator between just purely financial investors. Um, Guys that knew that the market would come back, even in the post 9/11 world. And it started from that. I raised a couple bucks, put up my shingle, got an office. Had to commute an hour each way to Miami from where I was living. Um, Put together a small group of guys that I really believed in and thought could get me there. Um, offered, you know, offered an opportunity and a paycheck, and something that I only got half of. I got the opportunity, but not the paycheck. but it was well worth it. And here we are today with 1,400 people on our team.
Yeah, we'll spend more time talking about, GA Telesis and what it is today. I'm curious about that decision, that origin. In your mind, did you have certainty? Like, "This will work, I'm betting on myself, I'm confident," or were you, partially like, "I don't know, this is scary."
Yeah, both. So I knew it would work, because I'd done a lot of time or spent a lot of time analyzing what I was doing, and what I was doing was solving a problem. There was a problem, and I had created a system that would solve that problem. I knew there would be interested parties, especially post 9/11, where cost became, a key driver in the airline industry. So, it always has been, but especially then. Um, that I knew it'd work, but I was leaving a really well-paying job. I was, like I said, I'd been married, you know, a year. I had a baby, I had a mortgage. There was a lot of scariness to it for sure.
Yeah.
And full disclosure, I lived off of I got a home equity line of credit. That was my paycheck. That I had to draw down on that every few weeks to pay the rent, or the mortgage, to feed my family. Um, those early days were a real struggle. Definitely couldn't afford Starbucks.
And then I'll go back to, have you and your wife revisited that decision in hindsight? Like, "Man, that's the best thing we did. Hey, those were
Yeah.
tough times." Have
Well,
have you had that conversation?
it comes up every now and then, especially, a lot of people think, well, a lot of people don't know the story. So, they think that I'm just, the CEO of GA Telesis. They don't know that it started in the little desk in the corner of my master bedroom. So that's something when people say, how long have you been working at GA Telesis? And it always reminds us that, oh my gosh, it started, with such humble beginnings, with, no money and no place to go to work. I used to joke that my car was my office, because I drive to Miami every day to look for opportunities. And I used to joke that I had a nice leather seat, and my desk was a steering wheel. And I would drive around just looking for something to help me get my first deal done. So we revisit it all the time.
Yeah.
A college student was telling us, a few months ago, about how he had to, he worked his way through college and he had to live off of macaroni and cheese. And we were joking that, there was a time in our, in our lives, married with a kid, and we were all eating macaroni and cheese because that's all the money we had.
Well, and Abdul, I always look at this, and it's funny because I've met so many entrepreneurs that have had success, and it always seems like overnight sensation. And I'm like, yeah, but that overnight is about 10 years typically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for you, was it roughly that time frame? I'm just curious, like from origin to real success.
Gosh, to be honest, we almost had immediate success in the business. We were actually profitable in the first month of our business. There's a lot of when I was sort of pre-company, I set a lot of groundwork. I did a lot of things to be in that position, but we actually made a profit in month one
That's
and
awesome.
in year one, and that was great. But I had an investor I had to pay back, right? So it wasn't, that I was all of a sudden on easy street. So I would say it took a solid 2.5 years before I started to feel like, all right, this isn't bad. This is working, and things are good. I'm not worried every day about making payroll. I don't have to eat, dried noodles for dinner. Things are moving in the right direction. But the first sort of, indication that things were working was, so I started in early 2002. In mid 2006, I got approached by two of the largest investment funds, at the time in the world, asking to buy my company, and with a nine-figure valuation. So
Yeah. Awesome.
it was from 2002 to 2006, and then in 2007, I sold half of it to a different financial institution.
Um, if you we jump forward to today, and you talked about 1,400 employees, but if you had to describe the GA Telesis today, how would you describe it? What are you most proud of? What has it become?
Well, the thing I'm the most proud of is that we're considered the gold standard at what we do, and we do a lot of things. So to be at that level is something I'm incredibly proud of. Look, we've done everything we've done right. I've had institutional shareholders, from Bank of America Merrill Lynch to Tokyo Century to All Nippon Airways. I've really been able to build my company up with a reputation that we are those we're smart guys that execute, and we do it all above board. I've got the most well-regarded team, which is the hardest thing about it, because when you're surrounded by a whole bunch of all-stars, everybody's after them all the time. But generally speaking, the herd that I've built is world class, and everybody looks to them as sort of the leaders in the sector.
And if you replay that journey, because you have a really powerful team now, sounds like at origin you were fortunate to have some really good people join you.
Yeah.
But along the way, how did you maintain kind of this high performing team focus? And I'll give a little cheat code. I've looked and said the essence of leadership for most leaders is the ability to inspire to believe in something and then take action toward it. And the
Yeah.
second is when we're at our best, meaning like head of the company, we're focused on vision, values, expectation, and engagement. It's like, how do I set the vision forward? How do I define how I want people to act and behave? How do I set really high expectations and then engage on those three? That I stop doing aviation work doesn't mean I'm not in that industry, but I stop doing that work when I get most powerful because I have other people on the team that are better than me.
Yeah, so starting at your first point, so as soon as I raised enough money to get started, to really launch and do what I wanted to do, I approached a guy and said, "All right, I've raised the money. I'd like you to join me." And he said, "That's great. I'm on." So I said, "Great. Why don't you come over after work, and we'll talk about it." And he said, "That's great. I'll be there." So he showed up. My wife answered the door. He said, "I'm ready." And she said, "That's great. We're ready too." And he said, "No, no, seriously, I quit." And she said, "What? You quit your job? But we're not that ready." He's like, "No, no, I'm all in. I'm all in. I believe in this. We're gonna do this." By the way, that guy is still here. He sits about, you know, 20 yards away from me in an
That's
office
awesome.
down the hall. And he's been a believer since day one. And, he is the crux of the organization. I mean, he took a big leap of faith, because he quit his job before he knew I could pay him.
Yeah.
So, when you talk about inspiring others, that was one of those where I wish I wouldn't have inspired him so much because it all of a sudden became very real, very fast. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I haven't actually started day one, and I got a guy on the payroll, and luckily it all worked out, and that wasn't a problem. So, in that regard, inspiring others, it really comes from leading by example, and then not worrying about others being smarter than me. I get it. A lot of people are smarter than me, but if I surround myself with people as smart as me and smarter than me, the collective is just really smart. My challenge in those early days was, though, I was a startup, and a startup before the concept startup ever really meant anything. So a lot of guys would say, "Look, you look like it looks like you're doing great, and I'd love to join you, but I work for this big company, and I got big company benefits, and I feel so comfortable where I am. So I can't come work for you because I've got a family, and I got to think about whether you're still going to be in business in a year or 2 years from now, and I've been where I am for a while, and I feel comfortable. And look, I totally get that mentality, um, but those same people today would beg to work for me.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. If we jump to today and say, how are you spending your time as CEO today? How would you describe kind of your focus these days?
All strategy now. I have 5 division presidents. Each of them has sort of full P&L authority. I don't, you mentioned it earlier. I set guideposts, I set expectations, and I step back. They manage their P&L with the help of my staff that supports them. That is my financial team, my legal team, my HR team. They're there to make my P&L leaders successful, and that has just worked for me immensely. I mean, I don't I don't get into the weeds anymore. Sometimes people will call me, or an airline will call me and talk to me about, you know, a specific parts issue or a specific systems issue. And I know it, but I don't know what they're talking about around that specific transaction because, we're dealing with thousands of customers around the world. So I don't know everything going on. So typically I'll say, well, let me get somebody on the phone and let's figure this out together so we can solve whatever thing you're trying to solve. But generally speaking, the the team that I've assembled, they run the business. They do everything they do. And I sit back and try to figure out what's next. It's always sort of what's next. Back in, I think, about 2008, I came up with a new sort of company tagline. It was intelligently defining aviation. And why was that? Because up until that point, aviation wasn't institutionalized. Like, it was so fragmented. It was a lot of mom and pops, a lot of sort of companies without sort of being institutionalized in how things should run. And what I found was every system that we put in place to run our business was being adopted by the industry. So I just said, you know what? If everyone's just going to copy us, I'm just going to say that we're defining aviation. So that worked, and that whole process, a lot of great companies have emerged since then that do what we do, smaller but growing, and great companies, institutionalized. Um, and then it was sort of what's next. You can't keep doing the same thing in a world where technology is taking hold of every industry. The challenge with us is that the technology in airplanes hasn't really changed that much between 1956 and today. 737, that was designed back in the late 50s is still flying today. It's just called a Max 8 or a Max 9 or a Max 10. It is the same general airplane, different engines, different avionics, but generally it's the same thing. So my job, as I view it, is what is next? What is going to happen? I don't want to be in that sort of what every sort of business school teaches, that sort of that Kodak moment where should I go digital, or should I stay with what I have because I don't think anyone's going to go digital. I'm sort of 2 steps ahead of that. I'm not thinking what's going on today. I'm sort of trying to think about what's going to happen in 10 years and how do I address what's going to be needed in 10 years. And that's what I drive towards today. One of our divisions, called our Digital Innovation Group, has a product that, if successful, will create a digital transformation for the whole airline industry. We are still analog. I mean, not the airplanes. The airplanes fly digital, GPS, all the technology is digital, but everything behind the scenes is analog and has to be changed. And we created a technology that we were lucky enough, or maybe fortunate enough is the better way to put it, to get a patent and then file multiple supplemental patents to it and develop it. It's in full beta today. And if we are successful, which I truly believe we will be, we'll be able to create this sort of digital environment for everyone in the commercial and defense ecosystems. It is a remarkable tool, which, for the life of me, I can't understand why it doesn't already exist, but it will in the next few years.
Yeah, because you gotta believe, super, large industry and other industries have been doing that for a long time. It's surprising to hear that, that's an analog world still.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'll call successful start, looks like the future's remarkably bright. Almost every entrepreneur I've met, however, had these moments where it's like, "Oh my god, this is going terrible." Um, have you had those moments? Have you had the setbacks? Have you had the, "Yeah, boy, man, this is really tough."
Absolutely. In our industry, today is a perfect example. We're affected by anything. Number one, we're a global company, so somewhere in the world, something is going on that's having an impact on our business. Today, it's the war with Iran, that's impacting us. But I can go back. So 2004. Um, you know, I thought everything was going great. Oil prices started to spike, and Northwest Airlines files bankruptcy, US Airways files bankruptcy, Delta Airlines files bankruptcy, and these are my customers. And I'm like, oh my god, what do I do? How am I going to get through this? These guys owe me a lot of money, and now they're not going to be able to pay me, or not required to pay me because they filed bankruptcy. So got through that, and came out stronger. By 2006, we were back on track. Everything was good. A lot of interest in the company. Sold half the company to a major bank, and then 2009 hits, and the world implodes again, but very differently, right? So in 2004, I was dealing with my customers being the problem. In 2009, the whole world was the problem. The whole financial framework of the world was broken. So none of us knew if the banks that were holding all our money were going to make it, and how we were going to survive in an industry that requires leverage to operate. I mean, these airplanes are 50 to $300 million. You buy those with leverage, right? You can't just pay cash for everything at those dollar amounts. But we got through it, and we thought everything was going to be great, and we kept moving forward. And then around 2013, when the Eastern European market really started to grow, we said, hey, let's invest in Eastern Europe. We went long on Russia. Russia invades Ukraine, sanctions hit, topples the economy, and my next crisis. And then we got through that by 2015, and everything was going great. 2015 was a record year. 16 was a record year. 17 was a record year. 18 was a record year. 2019 was the biggest year in the history of the company. First quarter of 2020 was the biggest quarter the company had ever had in its history. And then punch in the face, COVID. And what does COVID do? It grounds every airplane in the world. My revenues dropped 80% in 60 days. And again, very different. That's not an airline bankruptcy issue, although it very much looked like airlines were headed that way. It's not a financial crisis, although everybody was in a financial crisis. This was this lockdown. And nothing. I couldn't look back on any other scenario that I'd lived through in the past and say, okay, I know what to do here. This is just like 2004. Or this is like 2009. I can get through this. No big deal. But it was very different. And, in those early days, I thought to myself, this is probably like the flu. Who gets the flu in the summertime? It'll be over by August. And, as you well know,
Yeah.
it was August, but 3 years later that, the world kind of felt fully recovered from it. So tons of setbacks throughout the 25 years of being in business, but all of them were something that I could draw some level of experience from. All of them were sort of a testament to the leadership that I had in place. a lot of bootstrapping, a lot of sort of circling the wagons to protect the company, to protect the team. But we were able to do that. And by doing that, we came out a stronger company in every way, stronger with the people we had, stronger financially, in every way, we emerged a stronger company.
Well, and you're describing, it's funny because when COVID hit, I work with a lot of businesses and particularly leaders of businesses. And it's funny because I used an aviation example. I was like, you need to be, this is your captain speaking. You
Yeah.
need to tell people it's going to be okay. You need to say, hey, we're going to go through some turbulence. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what we're doing about it. Don't worry. And instead, what I saw is a lot of, I saw three options. And one was leaders were curled up in a ball and crying. Other leaders were going, I'm not doing anything. And the most successful were like, this is my new reality. What do we do? And viewed it as, hey, there's chaos. And old Chinese proverb is there's opportunity out of that. And how do we grow and think? And you described in that, Abdul, and I'm curious, hey, leadership team, we bootstrap, we go solve the problem. There's a can do. How do we survive? How do we move forward? Uh, uh, where does that come from in your team?
So let me go back to COVID because it'll sort of explain where it comes from. Um, so during COVID, and I didn't know it at the time, but it became evident as as time went by. I saw some of the worst leadership at the biggest companies in the world that I've ever experienced in my life, even worse than the financial crisis. I think a lot of leaders, or I'll call them business leaders or business managers, because there's a lack of leadership, just did what they thought they were supposed to do. They didn't think about it. They just did what they thought they were supposed to do. They did what they thought would get them the least amount of resistance by taking the risk of doing what was ultimately the right thing. So the biggest companies went to their teams and said, "Hey, we don't know how long this is going to last, so we're going to retire everybody at this age and give you your retirement. You go about your way. We're going to lay off thousands of people, um, and we're going to redirect jobs, to positions that are being vacated by people retiring and moving or being laid off, and everyone else, we're going to work from home, and with technology, everything's going to be great." The reality is everything wasn't great. The people that they retired were the only people that knew what they were doing. The people that laid off were the people that actually did the work. So these companies just melted, they imploded, and they're still to this day paying for it. I remember in 2020, um, I was faced with, okay, what do we do? Well, I already said we came out of Q1, we came out of 2019, the biggest year in the company's history. We were flush with cash. First quarter of 2020, biggest quarter of the company's history, still flush with cash. 2 months later, revenues are down 80%. We were scared. We didn't know, okay, how are we going to deal with this? And I got together with my core team. We call them AAA. It's Alvin, Andy, and Abdul, the three of us. We sat in a room and I said, look, the only thing we have here of value are the people. Everything else we can replace. Inventory we can replace, systems we can replace, but we can't replace the people. So we have to figure out how are we going to survive without losing any of our people. And they agreed. They said, you know what, you're right. Because everything else seems to be at a freeze. If we lose our people, we lose the people that make it happen. But people are looking for an answer, right? Every one of my competitors, I'm hearing, laid off 100 people, laid off 500 people, laid off 200 people. And my people are genuinely scared. So I called a town hall, and I kind of fibbed. I got everyone together because I knew they were scared. And I said, look, guys, I've gone to the board. I actually hadn't gone to the board yet. And I've talked to them and we've had a great year. And what we're going to do is promise to you all, my promise to you all is your jobs are safe. No one is going to be laid off. Number one. Number two, If you were promised a job promotion and it hasn't hit yet, it's date sensitive, that job promotion will still happen. So you will still get the promotion and the compensation for that. Finally, the bonuses, which haven't been paid yet, will all be paid. So you will not be without the money that you earned last year, because that is your money. We've just been holding it subject to our audit closing, and we will pay you all of that money. However, here are the two rules. Number one, we have a lot of people that have to work. They have to come to work because they're mechanics and technicians and engineers. They have to be here every day. So if they have to be here every day, we're all coming to work every day. If you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant, if you're a salesperson, you will be coming to the office every day. I will be here with you. Our CFO will be here with you. Our chief commercial officer will be here with you. All the officers of the company will be here every single day making things happen. That's number one. Number two, this is not the time to suck. If you are planning on not doing your job well, this is not the time. We don't have the patience for it right now or the time. So if you can't do it, we understand you're going to be let go. So don't be that person. So probably between that speech and the end of the year, I know the exact number. 17 people left the company. Some of them left because they didn't think it was fair that I was making them come to work when other companies were allowing people to work remote. You know, at the end of the day, when those people resigned, it was sort of, who cares? If that's what matters to you, working from home, go work for someone else. But at the end of that year, not only did we replace those 17 people, we were 22 people higher than we were at the beginning of the year, because we hired all the good people that our competitors let go.
It's what I said, there's opportunity in this chaos, and we
Absolutely.
can all go back to that time, Abdul, and what I love about what you said is you were, this is your captain speaking. This is what's gonna happen. This is what we're gonna do, and through that, also set real expectation of how we're gonna succeed, how we're gonna move through it. Beautiful story, and as you reflect on all those setbacks, and your leadership team and how you've gotten through it, how has it shaped who GA Telesis is today? What's the impact of that on the team?
You know, we've lived through a lot of these crises over the last sort of 25 years. And the people that have been through those crises um, now feel impenetrable, right? They all sort of stick out their chest and say, come get me. I'm not scared of what's coming. This latest sort of situation, this latest crisis with oil prices going up above 100, and potentially upending our industry again for a period of time. That period of time could be 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. We don't know. What we do know is our business is solid, our leadership is solid, and everybody can know that they're working for the gold standard company that will be here when this is all over. And again, we're going to figure out how to be stronger, because when things like this happen, it's a test, and not everybody passes the test. And when they don't pass the test, that leaves an opportunity for us to capture some other element of the business that we didn't have before. Would be that market share, be that a new customer, whatever it is. But we'll be there, and we are committed as a team to the success of this company. And when you're all working right to steer the ship in the same direction, then it's just a lot easier to make it through these issues.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's the hey, we're used to winning. We know what it feels like. We know what the challenge and setback is, but we're going to find a way to win. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely.
What's been the hardest part for you in building this team? And what I mean by that is that, you have to remove yourself from kind of the hero role of, hey, I was a founder, I did this, and I need to have people do things without me being involved. what was the hardest part of that for you as you kind of look at the 25 years of how do I either relinquish control? How do I delegate? How do I inspire? What's been the hardest thing in that growth from, man, I was doing everything at one point to now I'm just the vision guy? What's been the hardest part for you?
Yeah, that's funny. So if I go back to the early days, when we first started the company, we had this form that I had made that if you wanted to spend money on something, you had to fill it out, and I had to sign it if it was over $50. So if you were going to spend $50, I needed to know about it. So if you're going to buy a plane ticket to go somewhere and visit a customer, whatever it was, you had to buy new cables for computers, whatever it was, $50, I had to sign it because it was my money, and I was scared that I'd run out of it, and I knew I had to make payroll, and I didn't have a bank loan, and there's all this sort of unknowns for me. So we were that's where we were. And I remember I was in a meeting with a major US airline, and the airline was talking about Memorial Day weekend coming along, and they had this particular part, and this particular part was it's about a $500,000 for just this one part. And the uh the airline said, look, we're down to zero spares, and we're really worried with Memorial Day weekend and the high frequency of flights that we're going to run into an AOG, aircraft on ground situation, with zero spares. Do you guys have any ideas? And the sales guy, not his division president, but the sales guy says, absolutely. I'd already figured out that you guys were in a zero spares position. I ordered one from the OEM. I have it on the shelf in case you run into a problem. It's here. And first I was like, see, that's so great. My guy solved the problem. Then it hit me that he spent a $500,000 and I didn't know it.
Yeah.
And so the meeting was finished, and I went over to the division president and I said, hey, did he get any kind of approval when he spent that $500,000? He said, no, I empowered him to take care of the customer. It's a big customer, so he did what he had to do. And he said, oh, by the way, I spend millions without you knowing it. So, so I guess the system is set up, and it works, without me even trying. And as I explored it more, I realized that, the reality is my company spends tens of millions of dollars on products and services every day of the week, and I know nothing about it. I've delegated that all to leaders that have never put me in a situation where I felt like we were in distress. So, you know, how that when that actually happened, I don't know. But there was a day when I was going to elevate my first executive from senior vice president to president. And he came to me and said, I don't believe you. And I said, you don't believe me what? He said, I don't believe you'll ever give me the authority of being the president of this division. I said, no, I'm fully committed. This is your business. Here are the guide rails. Here are the expectations. If you're going to fall out of those guide rails, come to me before I come to you. And if you're going to miss on the expectations, you need to come to me before I come to you. Those are the rules. From then on, it's worked. That was president number one. We've added four more since then. And beyond that, we have regional managing directors, which are essentially regional presidents all over the world that run regions of the world for us as well. And all of them run their business autonomously. And we have the systems in place to make sure that there's good alignment with the company's practices. And that is what's helped us scale the business from one guy in the corner of his master bedroom and his wife like typing documents for him, to 1,400 people.
That's awesome. When you think about next stage of growth, Abdul, of the company and go like, this is where we're headed. These will be the challenges. What will need to change to be successful?
So we got to go through. We're going through it now. It really, it's sort of been a vision. Um, sort of this is what I think we should be doing, to now really looking and being data driven in our decision making and what I'll refer to as capital allocation. I've got 5 divisions. Each of them operate separately. Each of them have their own cost structure and revenue structure. And um, now I have to, instead of just letting it flow, I got to allocate a certain amount of capital to each based on what they return for the company. So
Eh,
it
and in that, do you mean potential? So, like, capital will go where there's the most potential?
yeah, exactly.
Okay, awesome.
So it's driven now, it's all driven by data and information as to, which direction or which direction we're going to deploy our capital and which markets and we're going to go long here and we're going to go short here. We're going to spend more money on so here's a perfect timing, a perfect example. So right now we're in a position where flights have been cut because of the Middle East. Travel flow, cargo flow, everything has been cut. There has been some immediate reactions to this situation. It's caused a cash flow strain on a lot of airlines that normally operate in that region. So we'll go to them and use this as an opportunity to provide them liquidity. We can do everything from providing them loans that they might need, to buying inventory assets, to giving them deferred payment on maintenance actions that they need done, because once this recovers, they'll have to gear up really quickly. And if we're ahead of the game, they won't have a delay in getting their fleets back up in the air. So there's a lot of things we'll use this sort of bad situation for as an opportunity to not only serve our customer but serve ourselves.
Yeah, common theme through your, growth. Like, hey, these, obstacles that may crush others create new opportunity for you guys, which is awesome. If you could, wave a magic wand, snap your fingers, and change one thing about your company today, what would it be?
That I would be able to know everybody's name. That's the
Uh,
hardest thing for me. It used to be so easy, and I still run it like a family company. Look, my wife works downstairs. She's our chief marketing officer. She and I are here every day, but I'm on the road. Last year I was on the road 214 days.
wow.
I don't see a lot of people that often. I'm always trying to be in front of our customers and in front of our sales teams around the world. So, I come in and I walk by somebody and they say hello, and I've never seen the person before, and I want to spend the time and understand who they are and what their family situation is, and get to know them, but I can't. And I wish there was a way where I could do that and spend more time with all levels of my company, not my direct reports, because everything else in the business I don't have to wish for. It's already here. Everything, as I mentioned earlier, I got the best leaders, in the industry. These guys know what they do. They rarely call me with a problem. They only call me to gloat that they just got a great deal, and
Oh,
if they do call me with the problem, it's because it's one of the areas that I'm really sensitive to that they know. But it's rare. Like I sleep at night. The things that keep me up at night are being excited about the business or cybersecurity.
mm, it's awesome. When you picture the company 3 to 5 years from now and define success looking forward, what is it?
Um, that's a great question. I've got 2 versions of that story. Um, One is that, if we continue on our current growth trajectory, we will be double the size that we are today in 2030. So that's the simple one. But the other one is this product that I've created called Wilbur, which is the digital transformation tool. And Wilbur stands for Worldwide Integrated Lifecycle Blockchain Unified Registry, which is a digitization of all the documentation on an airplane through creation of a digital twin through tokenization. Um, all said, it basically digitizes all of the information related to what's required to put a plane in the air. If we have adoption of that, it will be a game changer for an entire industry. And for one guy to have been able to champion that, it'd be the proudest moment of my life.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it sounds like you're on your way there. From a um, audience perspective, there's plenty of listeners that are living this entrepreneurial life where there's constant struggle. I'm pushing hard. I'm trying to figure it out. Trying to get to this high performing herd or team. What's the one thing you've learned that you would share with them about multiplying results or your hours or your impact? What would you tell them?
So, when you start the company, you're the chief cook and bottle washer, right? You do everything. You're part of every part of the business. I remember my CFO in the early days, we used to joke that he was the chief forklift officer because he was the only other guy that was allowed to drive the forklift besides me because um, we couldn't afford the high level workers comp insurance yet. So, only the two officers of the company could drive the forklift because we'd indemnified the company from lawsuits. So, so in the early days, you do everything and you're involved in everything. And there's a big difference that people miss between a business owner and an entrepreneur. You know, the business owner continues to run the business. The entrepreneur, every chance they get, they step back and they let somebody do some function of the job that they used to do so that they could keep thinking. The entrepreneur, the most powerful tool an entrepreneur has is their mind, their brain. It's constantly restless. It's constantly thinking. It's constantly trying to do more, or scale or different. It's constantly thinking. And the difference between that and the business owner is that the business owner is thinking about, how do I make payroll? How do I just keep the doors open? Like, I allocate or delegated that part of my business almost on day one. I went to my finance guy and says, I never want to be worried about payroll. So you better make sure that we get enough money in here every week that we can make payroll so I don't have to think about it. I don't want to have to worry about paying the rent. I don't want to think about paying our vendors. You make sure that part's taken care of. And if there's something to talk about, you come to me, but don't come to me when it's too late. You come to me well in advance so that we can deal with it and not have a crisis. A lot of business owners don't think that way. They just stay focused on it and they're not thinking about scaling their business, right? So and you can take this to any business. You can take a guy that's a plumber and he's got one truck and he starts plumbing services, and once his 8-hour day is full, he's got enough money, goes and buys a second truck, and he hires a guy, and that now he's got enough for two trucks. Now, the entrepreneur is the guy that within 2 years has 150 trucks because he stepped back, let the other plumbers do the work every day, and every chance he got, he added another truck, which added growth to his company. The other guy just wanted to be a plumber. And he
Yeah,
just
sure.
wanted to keep plumbing and doing that job and adding a truck whenever he could. He never thought about scaling. He never thought about, what, if I had 10 trucks, I could buy the material cheaper because I'd buy it in bulk. And I could buy trucks cheaper because I could buy them in bulk. I could do everything better because I'm bigger, and I can scale the business because I'm going to step back and be the thinking part of this whole business. I'm not going to turn wrenches anymore. And that is truly the difference. There are hundreds of stories of plumbers and electricians that started out small, doing a little job with one truck, and now they're doing all the plumbing and wiring for high rises in New York City, right? With tens of thousands of employees. That's the difference.
Well, and Abdul, I always describe it to leaders that I work with that at your earliest success, you will feel lazy. You will go, I'm not doing the work I used to do when you were doing everything. And there's a aha moment for almost every leader. And I had it when you're like, we went from 50 million to 550 million. And I'm like, I'm not doing any of the stuff I was doing because I got great people here doing it. And
Yeah.
what you realize, and it's where you went, like my best power, my superpower is thinking forward, solving the problem, analyzing the market. Um, and you described it today with some level of certainty, betting on the future
Yep.
and accepting that risk and going, yes, moving forward, this is what I believe. And I used to tell my teams, I go, for right now, this is north. And I go, we may wake up tomorrow and realize that north isn't north anymore, and we'll have to do it. But I said, with certainty, that's where we're going.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's the inspire people to believe in something. And you've done that remarkably well. So
Thank you.
congrats. If listeners want to follow you, GA Telesis, where should they go?
I'm on LinkedIn every single day. I post as much as I can, but that's where most of the action is for me and my company. And I encourage everybody to follow the company, but also in our growth trajectory. Look, I told you we double in size in every 5 years. That's no lie. And you know, it's easy when you're going from 10 to 20 million. It's hard when you're going from 1 to 2 billion. Um, because the numbers are just so big. You know, takes a lot to move the ship these days.
Yeah.
But that is the trajectory of the company. Our Wilbur product, it's at wilbur.aero, WILBUR.AERO, to hear about the technology of the future. Um, you know, but LinkedIn is the place that we post everything we're doing.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your sharing today, your transparency, your candor, um, setting kind of an example of what real success looks like for listeners. I really appreciate your
Thank
time
you.
today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the time.
Thank you.